engages you in conversation. After you've shared a couple of drinks and a few laughs, he hands you a card, which reads, Al's All Nude BBQ, last Saturday in October, Key West, Florida. It's a tradition.
Hey, stop flashing that card around. Let's see. Oh, I have another rum runner. But that's all, I gotta cut back. But since you've been buying me drinks all night, and since you got that card from Al, I'll tell you all about it. Don't let it get around. Yeah. I don't know why Al didn't tell you himself. Where'd you say you were from? Wisconsin. That figures. We don't get a lot of guys down here with full beards except for guys that are trying to look like Hemingway. It's too damn hot. I'm surprised Al even knows anyone from Wisconsin. Well, like I always say, that Al is full of surprises. Anyhow, it was just about a year ago when I last took out one of them cards. There was a guy sitting right here at Sloppy Joe's on that very same bar stool. This guy was one ripe tourist. We get them all the time down here in Key West. Cameras hanging around their sunburned necks, skin peeling and falling like snow on the backs of their island shirts from Walmart. They come down to Florida to visit Goofy and Pluto up at Disney World and then figure, oh, what the heck, let's go farther south. They get to Miami in their Battlestar Winnebagos and find out hardly anyone speaks English. So they get pissed off and keep going. They look at a map and see Key West sitting at the end of the road like a big enchilada, and the missus says, oh, let's go there. And pretty soon they're sitting in Sloppy's or Rick's. And that's where I come in. I know I don't look like much of a salesman to you. I probably come across like every other conch. That's what they call us down here, like the seashell. Your basic flip-flops, your basic scraggly beard, your basic shoe leather tan. You come for the territory. I can spot a ripe tourist at 40 paces. You know, someone looking to buy. You got guys from New York trying to score a little nose candy. You got old fox from Toledo looking for a young and tender honey pot while the old lady hits the souvenir shops with a Visa card flashing. You got outdoor channel types itching to do some illegal fishing. My job is to make sure all of these people go home satisfied. And I always get paid off, one way or another. There's something about this town that brings out the outlaw in people. It's in the air. You see, there used to be a lot of pirates in Key West back in the old days, and I guess there still are. You got ocean all around, and the rest of the USA seems like 1,000,000 miles away from here. Look out at the water at night, and you swear you could hear galleons foundering on the reef. Pirate ships circling like moths to a flame. Oh, they used to do that, you know. Move the channel lights so ships crashed into the reef. Then they'd offer to salvage the cargo. Now that outlaw spirit never left Key West. You can hear it in the loud music on Duval Street all night long and see it in the outfits people are wearing and not wearing all over the island. This whole town basically says, screw them if they can't take a joke. People pick up on that attitude the minute they get out of their cars after their long, slow drive down from the Keys. They're looking for adventure, and I help them find it. Anyhow, I suppose that you'd like to hear about the barbecue. Sometimes I talk too much. So last year, I'm here at Sloppy's talking to this tourist guy for an hour or so. He's a big roly-poly guy from some town in Nebraska. He says his name is Howard, but that I should call him Howie. His old lady had run off and taken the kids. You know the story. He was probably on the long side of 40, just making ends meet, dead-end job, and then it all caved in on him. So he got in the car and drove south. Howie is telling me all of this over a rum runner. Imagine drinking these things at 9 in the morning. This guy is due to be on his ass real soon. I figure that he weighs 300 pounds at least, so I ain't about to hang around and get stuck helping him back to his motel. I make the mistake of asking about his family. Oh man, His whole life comes pouring out like crap from a goose. I mean, I heard it all. The guy's wedding, his 5 kids, his job that sucked. He even told me about the first time he ever got laid. Finally, he ends up showing me pictures of his kids. And then he starts crying. Right here at Sloppy Joe's bar. I mean, it was embarrassing. So I say, maybe they'll come down here and visit. Nobody even knows I'm here, he says. I just took off in the car. After a minute, he looks down into his drink and he says, I've already done some things in the past week down here that I thought I'd never do. Depraved things. Like anything could be considered depraved in Key West. And that's when I realized that Howie from Nebraska is a prime candidate for Al's All Nude BBQ. I dig deep in my wallet and come up with one of those cards like you had just there, and I flash it in front of him. I say, it's a local thing, very exclusive. You have to be invited. I just thought that being how you're kind of shook up and all, well, it might do you some good to go. You know, something new and exciting. Well, naturally he asks, what is it? Well, I answer, it's pretty much what it says. Once a year, some of us conscious have a barbecue, and we're all, well, naked. Why? Because it's Key West. So who's Al? So I give him the whole spiel about Al, former mayor of Key West, wealthy recluse, old confidant of Hemingway, world traveler. It's mostly crap, of course. When it comes to Al Schaefer, no one really knows fact from fiction, not even me. But all I know is I sure like to go to his barbecue every year, and Al tells me to bring along somebody along. He trusts my judgment. I grew up in this town, after all. So I tell Howie that the barbecue is this coming Saturday, right after the big parade. And if he wants to go, I can tell him where to meet. I think he's just sober enough to remember all of this, so I ask again. He gets a what the hell look in his eyes and says okay. I write down some directions for Saturday and I get out of there. As I said, I can spot a ripe one at 40 paces. So, Saturday night rolls around and we gather for the big parade. We have a big deal down here every October called Fantasy Fest. It's like Mardi Gras, only more decadent. They have a theme every year, like a prehistoric fantasies or future fantasies. It's just an excuse to parade down to Ball Street mostly naked. For future fantasies, we had mostly naked space people. For prehistoric fantasies, it was mostly naked cave people. I think you catch my drift here. So we're all gathering on Whitehead Street. We look like mostly naked African natives because this year it's jungle fantasies. We got bones in our noses, grass skirts, crap like that. We're getting ready to march in the parade when up strolls Howie from Nebraska dressed like Batman. Can you believe it? Batman? I don't know where he found a costume that big. He looks just like a big bowling ball with a cape. You look great, I tell him, trying to keep a straight face. But then I introduce him to Al, who's dressed like a native chieftain. He's got this huge feathery headdress and his stomach is hanging out like a hairy beanbag chair. Al always likes to emphasize that big gut of his like he figured he earned it over the years. No working out at the gym for Al, no siree. So when Al sees Howie from Nebraska, who is even fatter than him, he gives me a wink, and I know I did okay. Then we all start sipping barbecue lightning from our animal skins. That stuff could stop a lion at 100 yards. But hey, it's a tradition. So now we're dancing up Duval Street in the parade. TV lights glaring, jungle music blasting. We're following a giant float with a guy dressed like a missionary in a hot tub, made up to look like a big kettle. It's very funny. Al is smiling and throwing candy to the kids at the curb as we go by. Pretty soon, that jungle beat starts getting to everybody. Oh, we get a lot of folks down here from Haiti and Jamaica and places like that, and they love that beat. After a while, it gets in your blood. I look over and there's Howie bumping and grinding like a big fat ballerina. I mean, he's probably the whitest guy I ever saw. But he just keeps on sipping the sauce and jumping around. When we get to Southwood Street, our group starts our own little circle dance with Howie in the middle. It's a tradition. We're yelling all of these ooga chuckas and making a tighter and tighter circle around Howie. We always put women on the inside, so Howie's got all these boobs in his face. When we all press in tight enough, we get his feet off the ground and hang a left onto Southwood, away from the parade. Howie's a big guy, but we manage to keep him lifted up. We keep moving like that down the dark street, our own iPods churning out that jungle beat. Howie's in the middle of this 40-legged monster, laughing his ass off and shouting, "Oh, this is great!" Finally, a whole wriggling mass pulls up to the cemetery. Al had taped up a hand-painted sign on the iron gate. The moonlight makes it bright enough to read, and it says, "Al's All Nude BBQ. It's a tradition. Welcome, Howie from Nebraska." That Al. What a joker. We all step back so Howie can read the sign. He seems to be a little surprised that the barbecue is in a cemetery. We just tell him it's more private that way. He's too wasted to think about it much. Barbecue lightning always does its job. So now Al runs through the gates and jumps on the first grave he sees. Oh, you see, down here they bury people above ground because the whole island is only a few feet above sea level. Al uses one of the stone coffins for a stage, and he grabs his huge belly and wobbles it up and down. Then he howls at the full moon like a wolf. Then Al says, "It's time for Al's All Nude BBQ! Is everybody hungry?" Of course, we all yell, "Yeah!" So Al says, "Ladies and gentlemen, please remove your clothes." Now we all really cheer and start shedding our clothes left and right. For most of it, it's as easy as pulling one or two strings, but poor Howie gets stuck in his Batman costume. He'd obviously poured himself in, and the damn thing just won't come off. Some of us have to help him get it off. It seems like we'll never get those black tights off his rubbery ass. But we finally make it. By now, Howie's looking left and right like a parrot on a perch, checking out bodies in the moonlight. A lot of us are pretty old and saggy because it takes a lot of years to make mayor, or police chief, or superintendent. But we got a few young melons, so when Howie spies some boobs jiggling up and down, he sobers up a little. This is not good. So I holler out to Al to remind him about the ceremonial drink. Al blows on his conch to get everyone's attention, and we form a conga line. Al lights a torch, and we all march in a line to the beat of the music, weaving in and out around the graves, laughing and singing and having a naked old time. Howie keeps on grabbing the boobs of the ladies in front of him, and she keeps pushing his hands away. Old Howie is having the night of his life. It's a good thing, too. We get to the altar, and Al stops the line. He puts the torch in the ground and waddles up the marble steps where the ceremonial drink is sitting on a pedestal. Al grabs the big crystal goblet and carries it down the steps in both hands. He goes through his usual African mumbo-jumbo and walks solemnly towards the edge of the barbecue pit. He says some more mumbo-jumbo and dumps a little of the liquid into the pit. When it hits the barbecue grate, there's a loud hiss, and steam shoots into the air, looking orange against the glow of the hot coals. Then Al puts the goblet to his mouth and takes a sip. He holds the goblet up to the moon and starts saying more. Ooga chuckas. That Al. Ooh, what a joker. Al passes the cup around and we all take a sip. Only a sip. Finally, it gets to Howie from Nebraska. We all start chanting, chug, chug, chug. And Howie finishes it in one tremendous gulp. I look over at Al and he's laughing with that eye-squeaky laugh of his. We light more torches and put them in the ground around the pit. It's big enough so we can all stand around it. Al must have fired those coals up way before sunset because those babies are hot. We all start dancing around and around the pit. Torches flicker on our bodies and faces, and I tell you, pretty soon everyone's eyes are gleaming red. All except Howie's, of course. His eyes are a little glassy. He's still trying to dance, but he's kind of slow, and his arms are pinwheeling to keep his balance. Al blows on the conch again, and we all look up in anticipation, breathing real heavy. Al passes out the long poles and starts his usual spiel about his trip to Africa in 1977 and his trip to the Caribbean in 1979. Then he tells us what a proud tradition we have on our tiny little island about the bringing together of many sacred cultures at the southern tip of America. The usual pompous crap. But I guess Al's entitled to a speech once a year. Finally, his big rubbery face lights up and he hollers, "Barbecue!" and pushes Howie down into the pit. Well, poor old Howie sobers up in a hurry. He lands flat on his back on the grate, and I think the fire's a lot hotter than most years because we can hear him sizzle immediately. My mouth waters like an old hound dog. He screams a time or two, but that's normal. It takes Howie a couple of hours to cook, but we get to nibble on the outside parts all along. So anyhow, it's quite a feat finishing off Howie from Nebraska. I think he's the biggest we ever had. We end up feeding some of him to the dogs. Al tells me I made a great choice this year. Al has a way of making you feel important. We throw Howie's bones into the usual grave at midnight. It's a stone coffin with a false top, and we just pile the bones in there every year, although it's getting pretty full. The marker says, R.I.P. Al Schaefer.